Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of AniRaiders React. It's basically a series of short form podcasts with me, myself, Darkvice, and of course.
Me, myself, and I, Nuadacube.
And basically, we're just gonna be covering 2 episodes each episode of different animes, but right now we're watching the season 2 Jujutsu Kaisen, so that's what we're gonna be covering right now.
Yep.
So first of all, we should probably establish this. We've already watched season 1 and the movie, and they were both fantastic. And we're really excited for what's coming next with this new season.
We watched the movie I don't know how many times. Like, I think you said 10.
10 for me, at least.
I've seen it like 5 times, I think.
Yep. But let's get the show on the road.
All right.
Okay. So the first episode, on the day that we're recording this, the second episode has just dropped. Last week, which was the 6th, the first episode dropped. So with that in mind, okay. So the first episode, what were your impressions of it, Austin?
I think it was definitely a great entry into season 2. Establishing the fact that this is like a prequel, like story, like how they're starting off your season 2 with Gojo and Gato in their like relation, like being
Relationship in high school.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I think it was definitely a good start, a good kickoff for this season, which is going to be like, how many episodes? Like 26?
23 episodes.
23.
So right now we're in the hidden inventory arc / premature death arc, and this arc's only going to last 8 episodes, and then the Shibuya incident's going to last 18 episodes.
The Shibuya incident, is that like what's next, like for the story of Jujutsu Kaisen?
Yes, that's going to be. It's actually considered widely to be one of the best arcs in shonen manga ever written.
Really?
Yeah.
That's why you've been so hyped for this.
Oh yeah. No, but this arc is promising to be really good too. So yeah, going into the first episode, it starts out with Mei and Utahime actually going on a mission. Mei, which is the girl with the white hair, Austin, is established to be a first grade sorcerer, and Utahime is currently a grade 2 sorcerer, I believe. And the way that works is, in order to get a higher promotion, you have someone of a lower rank has to go with someone of a higher rank, and that person can recommend them for promotion.
Huh.
And one of the interesting things about this is Mei in the first episode, you see a very few amount of times, but she's all about getting that money. She's all about the fat stacks, yo. And one of the funny things in the first episode is Utahime figures out they were in a predicament where basically they were in a continuing loop in a house, and they couldn't figure it out. But she ended up figuring it out, and she was like, "Okay, since I figured it out, I'll be expecting a promotion from this." And Mei's like, "What up? Basically depends. How much money do you have in your savings?" So that was really funny. So she eventually, Utahime eventually figures it out, but as she's putting her plan into action, you see the house start to fall apart. And it turns out that Gojo had used his Limitless Blue to basically tear the house apart to get to her.
That's hilarious,
So,
actually. Like now that I'm thinking back on the episode.
So that was actually really cool. What I will say is, inside the house that Utahime and Mei were in, I got a lot of Resident Evil vibes.
Oh yes. No, we were kind of like, talking to each other about that, like when that scene popped up.
Yeah.
Because it kind of like reminded me, like I just played my first ever Resident Evil, which is Resident Evil 4 remake, and like walking like through that hallway, it just kind of made me think about that.
And it definitely reminds you that this is indeed not just a shonen anime, but it's also a horror anime.
Yes.
So what happens next is there's a bit of dialogue between Gojo and Utahime, and Gojo comments, Utahime, I'm here to save you. Are you crying? Like, he's like being just a bit of a dick, you know? He's being his normal Gojo self.
Mm-hmm.
You know, messing with people, and he's like calling her weak. And then Mei's like, I mean, if I was crying, would you console me? And he's like, nah, you wouldn't cry. You're strong. And that really gets into Utahime's nerves. So it's just kind of funny to see, like, you know, these early on interactions.
It's definitely you're building up for the for what's to come.
Yeah, what I will say, I just like the character development.
Mm.
Like, we didn't get to see a lot of Utahime and Mei. Like, they were kind of like more supporting characters and not really in the spotlight.
Yeah.
So being able to see them here, you know, working together and learning a bit more about their personalities was definitely a plus for this episode.
I definitely agree.
And so they're having a discussion, and at one point Mei says, okay, so thank you for saving us. So what about the barrier? Because Jujutsu Kaisen, Jujutsu Scissors are supposed to put up barriers so that normal people don't see what's going on.
And yeah, that totally didn't happen.
Yeah.
So and then like it shows up like on the news.
Yep.
About
and then,
like a random explosion of this house where suicides took place.
Yep, and their teacher ends up mentioning, okay, so one of you said you would put up the veil and left your supervisor behind. So, which one of you is supposed to put up the veil? Both Gato and Shoko point to Gojo, and he's just like, Sensei, can we please stop this search for the culprit? And then he just gets punched. This you see the principal's no, the teacher. He's the principal in current day, but in this flashback, he's their teacher. He just brings down his fist on Gojo's head. And then the next scene we see is actually Geto and Gojo actually playing basketball, which actually wasn't in the manga. It's an anime original scene.
Really? I didn't know that.
The dialogue is from the manga.
Right. I did see that.
It's an entirely different scene. That's a thing I want to mention is in this anime adaptation, they're going to be extending a lot of things just to make them a bit more interesting. Because when it comes to animation, you can do a bit more than what you can do with manga.
Right.
So they're going to be extending things. They're probably going to be cutting things down short, I'm sure. But, you know, for the most part, it works. They're playing basketball and they're discussing. Gojo's like, I don't understand why we have to put a veil up in the first place. Because normal people can't see cursed energy. And Geto at this point is all about protecting the weak, protecting people who can't use cursed energy. Basically protecting normal society. And obviously this is a sharp contrast to how he is in Jujutsu Kaisen 0.
He is the complete opposite.
Yeah, but he mentions how the strong should always protect the weak, and the weak should be higher on the food chain compared to the strong.
Mm.
And Gojo's like, I do not subscribe to that narrative at all. I think people who are self-righteous and who think that way are just trying to make themselves feel better. Geto obviously is a bit annoyed by this, and he mentions, hey, you want to take this outside, and he summons one of his curses using curse manipulation. And, you know, they're about to throw hands. But then their teacher comes in and says, what are you two doing? And they're like, oh, nothing. And then the scene cuts to the teacher explaining to them their next mission. And that's to bring the Star Plasma Vessel to Tengen. And what this means is that Tengen is constantly evolving. So, over an amount of time, he basically has immortality, but that doesn't keep him from aging. And when he's aging, he's evolving. And because he's constantly evolving, he's constantly becoming more unstable.
Who's this?
So,
or can you elaborate who this Tengen is?
We haven't been introduced in Tengen yet, so I'm not going to do that for spoiler reasons.
Okay, so they're talking about this character, but they haven't shown him yet.
They haven't shown him yet.
And so I assume he's one of the main villains.
No, he... Again, I can't really say anything without spoiling things.
Okay.
I'm not going to. All I'm going to say is that Tengen is extremely important to Jujutsu Society, and Tengen's actually the one who created the barriers that allow Jujutsu Society to even exist in its current form. So, over time, if Tengen continues to evolve, he will eventually lose its sense of self.
Gotcha.
So, over time, Tengen will look for a compatible vessel, this being the Star Plasma vessel. And we learned that the Star Plasma vessel is Rico Amanai.
And this leads into episode 2, right?
Well, yes. But before we get into that, we learned that there are two organizations after Rico Amanai. The Curse User Group Q, which are which are completely against Tengen and want the current system to fall. And then you have the Star Plasma Association, which is a religious group that actually worships Tengen as a god.
Ah, gotcha.
And the idea of Tengen assimilating with a human is seen as blasphemy to them.
Ah, so that's why they want to eradicate the vessel.
Yeah, before they can get Tengen.
Ah, I see.
So the first, so at the end of the episode, we see them go to get Rico, and as soon as they get there, there's a huge explosion. They don't know what's going on, and they see and Geto sees Rico falling out of a window. She then moves in to save her, and we are introduced to two members of the Curse User Group Q, and one of them is is about to fight Geto, and he's like, "That uniform, you're from Jujutsu High. Get out of our way, or I'll kill you." Right? And Geto is like, "Really? Sorry, I can't hear you from down there. You gotta come up here and speak to me personally." And then, and this image was meme to death. You just see Gojo on his cell phone with a bunch of knives pointing at him.
Oh yeah. It's like that scene from is it Tangled, like where like everybody in the bar like points their swords at or what's his name? Or Eugene, I think is his name.
Yep. And
it's a way to incorporate that meme.
Yeah, and the person that Gojo is about to fight basically says, "Oh, so you're Satoru Gojo. I've heard about you." And it's like, "Oh, have you?" And he's like, "Well, before we start fighting, let's set a few rules." And the guy's like, "Rules?" And he's like, "Yeah. The first rule and the only rule is going to be, if you beg for mercy and cry, I promise I won't kill you." And then the episode basically cuts there. Moving on,
how that's gonna go.
Yeah, moving on to the second episode, we see it opens up with Geto making himself a cup of tea, and we hear like someone struggling in the background. And then when we get to the scene, it's the Q member that he was fighting in the arms of a kissing curse. And it keeps kind of kiss him, and he's just going on saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'll change my ways." And Geto was just sitting down with his cup of tea, pretending not to hear him.
Yeah, like
and
he's like he takes his like hand to his ear. He's like, "What?"
yeah, and he keeps it. The guy keeps pleading, and Ghetto's like, "Yeah, right. Like a curse user could cut it as a farmer." And he's like, "So you were listening?" And he's like, "But don't worry, because my friend, he's the strongest guy we have, and he's gonna teach you both a lesson." He then gets a message on his phone, and it's a selfie of Gojo with the guy he's talking about knocked out against the tree. And he's like, "Is this the guy you're talking about?" And he's like, "That's him."
Now that actually makes sense. Like, I guess like I had a hard time like at first like this kind of piecing the things together. So thanks like for this kind of like recap and stuff. That's funny actually. Now that
I've watched the episode a number of times today. So
really,
yeah, because I wanted to make sure that I
fully understood everything. Yeah.
Yep. So it then cuts to saying, "Oh, the group Q has this after the defeat of the strongest member of the Q group, it disbanded shortly after. It collapsed on itself. So that's no longer a threat." And then we're shown a character known as Toji, who a lot of people who are manga readers know and love. He was actually shown at the end of the first episode. He was first introduced, but here we understand a bit more about his situation and how he's going to play into the story. And the first thing we see of him is actually him betting on boat races at a boat racing track. And you end up finding out he tends to try to make a lot of easy money by placing bets, and apparently he never wins.
He has a gambling addiction.
I think he has a risk-taking addiction.
Yeah.
And the guy who's contracting him, he's more like the moderator between the two parties. He's like, so this is where you've been after you disappeared on me. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm just here, trying to make some, I'm doing what I always do, trying to make some quick money." And the guy's like, "For as long as I've known you, you have never won." And you just see Toji just glaring at him. So they continue watching the race, and then they're discussing, how is he going to handle the situation. And Toji mentions, well, they have, when is he going to start? And he mentions, well, the Gojo clan kid is there, so I can't just show up and show up in front of him and kill him, and kill her. That's not how this works. So the broker is like, "All right then. So what now?" And he's like, "I'll handle it. Just keep doing what you have to do." And he says, "I've already done that, dumbass." And they continue the conversation. And as he's leaving, he says, "By the way, how's Megumi doing?" And that lets you guys know, if anyone who's curious, Toji Fushiguro is actually Megumi's dad. And Toji is just like, "Wait, who is that again?" So it just kind of shows how much of a part he is in his son's life, I guess.
Yeah. So, like, at the end of the first episode, when they introduced Togi, right?
Toji.
Yeah, when they introduced Toji, you were like, "Hey, Austin, what does that character remind you of?"
Yeah, and it took you a while to figure it out.
Because it's been a while since I watched the first season.
Yep. But that is Megumi Fushigora's dad. So
Definitely gonna be the an antagonist for this arc.
yep, he is mentioned as the sorcerer killer by the broker. So that kind
And
of implies.
so, like, who is he affiliated with? Is he affiliated with the Star?
He's the Star Plasma Group,
Gotcha.
because they don't use cursed energy themselves, so they have to hire people to do it for them.
To do their dirty work, yeah.
Yeah. So we then move on to see. Then the intro plays. And we didn't mention this when we were talking about the first episode, but the intro is amazing.
Oh,
if you haven't
beautiful.
Seen it, we highly recommend it.
It's probably one of the most beautiful anime intros I've ever seen.
Yep, it's absolutely fantastic. So the next thing we see, if I remember correctly, and I'm sure people in the comments would tell me I'm wrong about this, if I'm wrong, and feel free to. I can take an L. I'm not so proud that I can't take an L. But then it cuts to Riko waking up in Gojo's arms, and she just smacks the ever living shit out of him. Not that you can blame her, because she's aware that there are two groups of assassins after her. So she just assumed that they were, enemies.
Right. So, yeah, because the last thing she remembers is probably
The explosion.
Yeah.
So Ghetto is like, no. We're your allies. We're not with that group. We're trying to protect you. And Riko's like, liar! You have the face of a liar. I don't believe you. and then her caretaker comes in, and she's writing one of Ghetto's curses. And well, before that, Riko mentions how dumb Ghetto's bangs look. So when the caretaker comes in, Riko notices. Oh no! When she comes in, she sees Riko being pulled from both ends, from her feet and her head, and her hands by Ghetto and Gojo. Kind of playing with her and messing with her. For what she said, and she's just like, "This is so disrespectful." And then the caretaker comes in and she's like, "Okay, put her down." And you see her fall to the ground. Riko looks at her caretaker and she's like, "You're here. Wait, what is that you're wearing?" And then, she's like, it's from Bang's guy's curse technique." And Ghetto's like, "Can you please not call me that?"
I remember that line. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah. So he goes on to explain how curse manipulation works, and how he can exalt curses and things like that. They then discuss. Riko then mentions, "Wait, what time is it?" And the caretaker is like, "Oh, it's so and so o'clock." And she's like, "Wait, I have school." And at first they try to convince her not to go, because obviously she's being targeted. And you see Gojo on the phone, and he's like, "Doesn't it make more sense for us to just go back to the school? Isn't it safer?" And he's talking to his teacher, and his teacher's like, "Yeah, well, I wish we could do that, but Tengen's orders were specifically that we need to fulfill all of her desires before the merger happens." Basically, make sure she can live the best life she can with the amount of time she has left before she has to do the merger. Because once she does the merger, she's erased.
Her
consciousness is erased.
Her sense of self.
Yeah, so that Tengen can regain its sense of self.
And
It's basically
is Tengen his own force, or is he with the Jujutsu or sorcerers?
well, the Jujutsu sorcerers work with Tengen.
Gotcha.
So technically, yes. But yes. After that, we didn't see her at school, and the others are sitting down, and Gojo asks, "Okay, Geto, so you sent some curses to monitor her, right?" And he was like, "Yeah. Unfortunately, unlike Mei, I do not have a direct line of sight to my curses, but I will be able to detect if something happens." And right as he says that, he's like, "Gojo, get to Rico's side as soon as you can, because 2 of the curses were just exercised."
Which is not a good sign.
Yeah. We then move to Geto walking into a hallway, and he comes across a curse user, an old man who can summon Shikigami, much like kind of what Megumi does, but not on the same level. And they start fighting, and the old man is like, "Okay, so he can summon these creatures without a catalyst. So they're not Shikigami. So that means that," and he's like, "That's right. I'm a curse manipulator." So the old man already knows what the curse technique is. So he says, "Okay, if he's using curses, then that means, like, much like a Shikigami user, he doesn't like close quarters combat. And because I'm a Shikigami user, he'll assume that I don't like close quarters combat." So Geto releases a huge curse and basically fakes him out and thinks, "Okay, I got him." You didn't see the old man burst through the window right beside him with a knife and try striking at him. He then starts hallucinating about a dog that was apparently his only friend when he was in high school and things like that. And right away, and Austin, you said this right away, that dude's fucked.
Yeah, no, like when he saw the dog, I was like, that you're saying it was at this moment he knew he fucked up.
Yep. And then what happens next, Austin?
Let's just say he didn't meet a good end.
He
It shows like his life or flash before his eyes.
Yeah, and then you just see him getting the beating of a lifetime.
Yeah.
And after Geto beats him, he's just like, "So tell me, are you with Q? Or with the Star Plasma Association?" It then cuts to Gojo fighting 2 other curse users. No. Before that, it cuts to Gojo finding Rico in the chapel of her school. And Austin, do you want to explain what happens in this scene?
The moment he stepped foot into that building, all of her classmates went nuts over him.
They just completely stopped what they were doing to look at him.
I mean, Gojo is a sexy man, no homo, but
Daddy Gojo, yes, I agree.
But yeah, no, like they went ballistic, saying, "Rico, like, how could you have such a sexy boyfriend and blah blah blah," and like they were trying to get his number and stuff.
Yeah, and even the teacher was like, "Hey, everyone, stop!" Runs over to Gojo. This is my number, by the way.
No, like you see her like when she first like ripped the she had like a notepad and she like ripped a piece of paper, or she wrote something and ripped a piece of paper, and I was like, is she writing him up? Like, and then she went up to him and was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, here's my phone number." Yep. Oh yeah, no, that was amazing writing, in my opinion.
We then move to see Gojo and Rico running across a rooftop, and Gojo's explaining basically again why he has to protect her and that she needs to be aware of how much danger she's in.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come across, and then we see a big muscular curse user wearing a paper bag over his head. And he's like spying on them as they're running. And he's like, sweet, I get a high bounty, and the kid's not even a curse user. I'm gonna eat something really good after this because everyone knows that food tastes best after you kill someone. And then her caretaker is like, starts fighting him, and she gets him good in the nuts.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually learn that the caretaker is actually a pretty competent fighter herself, and is actually kind of a badass.
Yeah, no, I was actually not expecting that.
Yeah, she even says she's gonna kill him if he does anything to her.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes to show you. Also, in case you haven't realized, we're going to put in the title of this video that they're all spoilers.
Yes.
So if you haven't watched the episode, pause this video now.
Before or later on in post, like I'll put like a warning in the very beginning.
Yep. But yeah. So after that, we see Gojo start fighting the bagheads, and he starts showing off like the different ways he can use his limitless technique. Like he explains how infinity
boy,
works.
is it so beautiful.
Yeah, so like he explains how infinity works because they both try to attack him. And in the beginning of the fight, when they're both looking at him, he activates Limitless Blue, and what that does is it basically creates a almost like a black hole where it sucks objects into it. Like it has that effect. So you see two of the backheads clash hit each other, and then fall to the ground.
Hmm.
And they're like, "What did you just do?" And then he explains it. And then they go to both punch him, and then it's kind of like it stopped. If you've seen the first season, you would know that that's part of the Limitless. Is it basically creates an infinite amount of space between him and his opponent, or whatever is posing a danger to him. So he explains that, and then we see the Bagman start making clones of himself. And Rico's like, he's making Shikigami. And after they fight again, she starts to wonder why aren't the Shikigami disappearing, because once the Shikigami is destroyed, it disappears. So Gojo explains he's not actually using Shikigami, these are actual clones. And she's like, well, where's the real one? And he's like, because they're clones, they're all technically the real one. And then he mentions to the bag user, he's like talking to him, and he explains how his curse technique works again, how the Limitless works. And he says, what I've noticed about your technique is you can make clones, and if you feel like your main body is about to be destroyed or injured, you can just switch to a clone and make that your main body. And he's like, it's actually a pretty powerful technique.
So he can switch bodies freely to his will?
Yeah. So Gojo mentions that's actually a really powerful technique. So I'm surprised by how weak you are.
Oof.
And then the real body's hiding. So Gojo's like talking to the real body because his six eyes gives him a higher perception of things.
Mm.
So he can actually see him, and the curse user is not aware. So he's talking, and then Gojo's like, unfortunately for you, I have really good eyes. So you just see him destroy a wall aside of a building. And he finds the main body. And he's like, and now from a reverse curse technique, reversal red. It starts to activate, you think it's going to do something, and then it just craps out. And then Gojo's like, I failed! And he punches the guy in the face. To the ground.
So this like goes to show like Gojo, like yes, while he's still powerful in his younger years, he hasn't mastered it.
He hasn't gone to his peak yet.
Yes.
He's nowhere near as... He's really strong in the season so far, but he's just not quite there yet. So...
And I think that they were really trying to establish that.
Yeah, and at some point in the episode, Koji's explained the bounty to why he placed the bounty. Because the broker is like, why did you place the entire deposit on a bounty? If someone else kills her, then you don't get your money.
Mm-hmm.
And he explains, well, yeah, but if I went after Gojo now, he'd beat me. So I'm going to let these guys wear him down. None of them are going to be able to kill him while Gojo's around. But they'll be able to do just enough to wear him down. And then I'll jump in and attack him. So that's pretty much this. Those were pretty much the first 2 episodes in a nutshell.
And like, what does the episode leave off on? Because like, there's like an image of the protector, like she's like tied up or something like that.
Oh yeah, the protector ends up getting kidnapped. So we can kind of assume that the bad guy who's fighting her, like he may have switched bodies after he got punched to her and may have captured her then.
Ah. So he, when Gojo didn't kill him, he switched bodies?
Yep.
That makes sense. Man,
but
this anime is so deep.
Yeah, but one thing I will say, but we won't know until the next episode.
You know, like, that's the thing. Like, I went to a 7-Eleven I frequent. That's, like, right across the street from my work. And I was talking with the store employees. I'm actually wearing a Jujutsu Kaisen shirt right now. You can't see me right now. But it started up a conversation. And both the guys there, they were like, yeah, we love Jujutsu Kaisen. And they were saying it's, you know, like, it's so good because of how deep your story is and stuff, and like how well written it is.
Yep. So to cap this off, so far the animation looks amazing.
Oh yeah, no, like they're going with a whole new animation style for your season 2.
Yep.
And it looks beautiful.
It's much more simple, the character designs.
Mm-hmm. And I think it works very well.
What I will is compared to episode 1, I feel like episode 2's art was a bit more well defined.
Yes.
I think there's definitely a bit more detail in this episode. It definitely felt more like an episode from season 1.
Mm.
As far as the design and art goes. I mean, it's still very much going with the more simple designs that this season's going with.
Mm.
But it really does work. And I can't wait to see what happens for the next episode, and I can only imagine that things are going to get much, much better.
It's going to get much more grisly.
Yep. So, that ends our impressions / I guess review of
the first 2 episodes of Jujutsu Kaisen season 2.
Yep, and this ends the first episode of Retro AniRaiders React. And in the next episode, we will be covering episode 3 and 4 of Jujutsu Kaisen season 2. So look forward to that.
Alrighty. I'm Nuadacube.
I'm Darkvice.
And we'll be seeing you guys later.
Peace.